Looks like we should be live now. I'm just gonna wait till people can hear me, and I'll probably wait a bit for people to hop on to the stream. But hello, everyone. I'm very tired. How are you? I'm just taking a look at the chat. Some people saying hello. Very nice. This was a crazy week. I'm really tired. I have my favorite drink here. And let's talk about some transit and news. If you haven't already, you should definitely consider following me on Twitter and Instagram. I posted a bunch of Twitter threads today, and I think hopefully that's interesting. I did a really long walk yesterday in Toronto along one of our subway lines. I'm very tired from that. When I got home, I worked on a video. I edited the video. I released the video. I I chatted with some people on Twitter, wrote some Twitter threads. I haven't slept in a while, but it's been a crazy week. So yeah, I'm gonna wait a few minutes as usual. I'll wait until about 3:10, and then I'll get into the main stuff. But then after that, anything could happen. But we'll talk about the news of the week. Talk about this really long walk and yeah, of course, the link to the next stream is in the video description, stream description, so you can set a reminder for that. And yeah, we'll get started shortly. Delicious. I'm just monitoring the various social media channels. We have a Discord server. It's linked in the channel. If you're not on it, you should definitely hop on it. It's pretty fun. There's a ton of people on it, and there's lots of good discussions and news and all that sort of thing. I post my videos and the like. So yeah, if someone can let me know in the chat, is the audio synced up with the video today? I'm hoping it is. There's going to be a pretty major delay between when people send messages and when I see them, or sorry, when I respond to them, because I've set it to delay a bit, and I think that should sort of buffer and help the audio and video be in sync, but we will see what happens. So, some good questions coming in. I'll get started now. Indeed, Nick has got it right. There is a lot going on in Canada and in North America this week. It's really crazy. So, let's see. Oh, I'm a shill now because I am drinking. I'm drinking my drink, and it's branded. I'm not sponsored, unfortunately, but if they want to sponsor me, I'd happily accept it. So, someone is saying, tell us about your walk. So, if you're not familiar with Toronto, the Yonge Line runs up and down Toronto's primary north-south street. It's a pretty significant street, Yonge Street. It has a ton of density along it, a ton of housing, offices, etc. I started at the northern end, which is not that far from the northern border of Toronto. And I started at the northern station, Finch, and I walked south past North York Centre, Shepherd Yonge, and then into the under the 401, which is a nightmare. I did a separate Twitter thread about that. The 401 being like one of the largest highways in the world. Terrible. From there, I continued south down this giant hill to York Mills, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It still gets really good ridership though, so that's notable. And then from there, there's a giant hill, so that was miserable. Walked up the giant hill. And then shortly arrived at Lawrence, which is in a really nice area, Lawrence Station. Collecting my thoughts. Yeah, the area around Lawrence is really cute. It's kind of like a main street. Yonge is less highway-like there. I would actually say that the entire length of Yonge was really cool because there is so many cafes. There are so many places where restaurants are spilling into the street and they're taking up some lanes, and like, I don't like it because they're taking up lanes, though I will admit that it's a little nicer if you're on the sidewalk and there's not cars blowing by you. But it's just nice. There's a lot of people on the street, etc. And I think someone should take some pictures, record this, because, when the restaurant owners inevitably say, as they have in the past, that if they lose their 2 surface parking spots, no one will come to their restaurant. we just show them pictures of this and say, like, hey, look, there was no surface parking and everyone was at restaurants. So I think that was interesting. From Lawrence, I continued south. The whole stretch between Lawrence and Eglinton stations is really nice. It's super pleasant. And as you sort of approach Eglinton, you get a lot of density, a lot of new development, so that's cool to see. At Eglinton, there's tons of construction for the Eglinton Young Interchange Station on the Eglinton Crosstown. You continue south from Eglinton, you see again more new development, which is really cool. Got to Davisville, walked past the subway, not many trains, kind of gets boring for that section. Got to St. Clair, now it's a bit interesting again. It's a bit more like when you're around Lawrence. Continued past Summerhill and then Rosedale, where it gets a bit more boring again, and then into the downtown core, past Bloor Young, and then arrived at Wellesley, where there is again a ton of new development. It's really crazy. Then to College and College Street, there is a crazy tower on the northeast corner, like it's two towers north of sort of, there's a block of hotels. That was crazy to see. And then, yeah, continued further south, Dundas, Queen, King. It wasn't super eventful. Got to Union Station, 15 kilometers later, lots of hills, long walk, very tiring. And then I took the subway home. So it was great. Audio is synced. That's great to know. So that was a bit long, so I'm going to try to go through all these other various discussion points and the like. I'm just checking again, see if anything's happening on social media. Okay, we look good. Should Amtrak be liquidated? I don't know. They're making some crazy moves. Is Siemens now the biggest rail manufacturer in North America? Yeah, probably. I guess passenger rail. I don't know about freight. Possibly not, if freight is included. San Diego wants to build a third track for the Blue Line for express service from downtown to Tijuana. Is this a good idea? If you're going to do express services, let's go quad track, because 3 tracks, as a wise person once said to me, don't make sense, because then you have this non-symmetrical flow of trains, right? Where you have more trains flowing in than out, for example, and that creates a lot of operational headaches. So probably not. Build 4 tracks or do skip stop or something. What's your thoughts on the Queens Link proposal in NYC? I saw it on Discord and I haven't looked into it yet, so that'll have to wait till next stream. Hey Reece, is there a city in the world where there's too much transit? Tokyo, maybe? Took the O train today, and after RTM did some rail maintenance, the noise and vibrations are so much better. That's absolutely awesome to hear, and I'm really happy because they were frankly unacceptable for far too long. That should be muted. Let's mute this. Let's go like that. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I'm gonna try to fly through a bunch of these because I'm starting to get buried. So this message is sent from Barry. Great city indeed. If Amtrak gets rid of its city sprinters, which commuter and rail network should they be sold to? Whichever one will buy it, frankly. I guess SEPTA. Well, as I said in the video, SEPTA, New Jersey Transit, maybe Boston. I guess something else in the New York area. Mark is a good example because Mark needs to re-electrify. They were electric, then they bought diesel locomotives, but then they went, oh, we need to buy electric locomotives again because we're getting a tunnel. So Mark has a penchant for wasting money, it seems, and they went to the Amtrak school, you could say, of money handling, and so they could be a good place to send them. I wouldn't want them for Canada. Frankly, I don't want any more hand-me-down equipment in Canada. If Amtrak... Okay, that I just said. With Megabus filling the void Greyhound left behind, offering Ottawa-Toronto service, what do you think of the future of intercity bus travel in southern Ontario and Canada as a whole? I think as long as the same routes are being served with service, that's great. I think more rail travel is ideal, though. I once took Megabus one time. It was not a fun experience. It was slow and uncomfortable and cramped, and I don't want to do that again. So if rail can be provided on a route, we should try to do that because I think it will encourage more people to ride. Oh, it's fallen out of sync. Great. I watched a recent video, and I don't think the article was telling us you were telling us about was accurate, because that's just one source. Other people said nothing about the ACS 64. So, yeah, it's a bit tricky. I was initially believing that it wasn't true, but then all of these sort of US transit people I follow on Twitter, many of whom are really intent and really fully knowledgeable in the space, they were suggesting, no, this is a real thing, this is happening. So I'm pretty confident it's happening. I think the other articles maybe just left details out, as they often do. A lot of those articles you'll read from various industry publications, which I read on a weekly basis, they're really light on the details. They basically just take the info from the press release and put it back out. So just going to put that out there. Walking a metro line is something I would highly recommend. I would second that. Can you elaborate on your controversial 200 km per hour, 125 mile per hour is high-speed rail take? I would love to. 125 miles per hour is fast. Hence, it is high-speed rail. But seriously, car traffic on a highway in North America rarely goes above about 120 kilometers per hour. So when you're talking like more than... Okay, I was about to say more than twice as much, but that would make me seem really bad at math. Well, you're talking about roughly twice as much. That is high speed. That is much faster than competing car travel, for example. And again, like when the HST, the Intercity 125, it's the high-speed train. I think 125 can qualify as high speed. There's talk of it only counts if it's an upgraded line, if it hits those speeds. But come on, does it really matter? Like from the passenger perspective, does it matter if the line was rebuilt or not? It just matters if you're going from A to B fast or not fast. And frankly, does it really matter if it's 200 or 205 or 185? Is there that substantial a difference? Especially when you factor in the fact that some lines will have station stops, some will have more express service. At the end of the day, if you're around 200, you're high speed in my books. And if you're 320, that's fantastic. And 360, even better. At the end of the day, the only way you can be truly specific is by saying the speed. And I think to the general public, who are the only ones that aren't going to really necessarily understand what the speed is and where that falls on the spectrum of high-speed rail, just saying high-speed rail is fine, because 200 is high speed to the general public, who have probably not been on a very fast train, especially if they're in North America. Okay, that was long. Young Lawrence is absolutely money. A great feeling in one's legs afterwards. Yeah, it's very sore. Does an hour-long rural bus line count? I'm not sure what you're referring to for what it counts for. Hadam is saying, how are you today? I'm very tired, but I committed to stream, and I'm going to stream. Let me take a sip and see what question is next. Matthew is asking, could you clarify if VIA HFR counts as a new or greenfield or upgraded line? Basically, is it a new line or an upgraded line for the purposes of the UIC, International Railway Organization's classification of HSR? Frankly, I don't know. I think that's kind of it's a gray area for me. Someone definitely knows, but I am not the person that knows that. But I think that sometimes we over obsess about what a specific standard is, and I think it creates confusion because, again, like, okay, so what if you have a brownfield line that's been upgraded, right? So now it's high speed, but its average speed is quite low, and then you have a line that's not upgraded, I guess, like, assuming VIA HFR doesn't qualify as upgraded. Imagine you have that, and you're going to make that comparison. You could have a higher average speed on the line that's not classed as high speed, which is why these standards are kind of silly. It's the same thing with bus rapid transit. I was talking with someone on Twitter, and they said, like, for it to qualify as bus rapid transit, it needs to have fully dedicated lanes, X, Y, and Z, and all of that. And I think that, like, yeah, that's a great ideal to have, but not every bus rapid transit system necessarily needs to look that way. And my personal kind of way of thinking about transit and about these things is like sort of a functionalism, if you could say that. Does it function like high-speed rail? Does it function like bus rapid transit? If it does it really matter what standard it meets, right? Like, the standard is just some people wanting to classify things and wanting to create a metric that lets them classify things, but those are always imperfect, so why even bother with them? That's my thinking. So many messages. That's good though. I'm happy that people are interested. I'm gonna grab my phone because the YouTube channel has been doing great this week, and I want to check how many views we have right now. Whew, that is awesome. Really awesome. Anyways, scroll up here. Okay. Okay. How would you map out a transit city system for a city like Houston or Las Vegas? I think in general, what you want to do is you want to deploy your transit network. Imagine it's just a grid of buses. What route is the busiest? That gets upgraded to a higher capacity route, higher speed route, and you continue the process. That's how to design a transit system, I think. Like broadly, in a simplified fashion. Shout out to the Lawrence Underground Bus Terminal. It's very cool indeed. Take a shot every time Reece says crazy. I can't advise you to do that, but, you know. Speaking of, if Elon wants to build another tunnel under Fort Lauderdale, thoughts? You know, if people want to go digging in the swamps, I'm not going to stop them, okay? Let's just say that. What do you think of London's mayor hinting that there will be a Via Rail news announcement for southwestern Ontario soon? I think that if there would be, I would be very happy. Worth noting that the guy who wrote the article mentioned that he spoke with an Amtrak spokesperson. Yeah, it's very possible that they were wrong, but in that case, I would be a little frustrated that people were complaining to me on Twitter for not believing that it was true. So at the end of the day, Amtrak is crazy, and what can I say? But I actually still think that it sounds feasible, what they're saying. Terrible, but feasible. Thoughts about Miami Transit, elevated metro, BRT, people mover, commuter rail, and Brightline. Miami has a lot of transit, but it feels horribly disintegrated. But it does have a lot of potential, like the metro rail system. It's pretty nice, right? Like it's got some. It's only one line with a branch out to the airport, but it's a pretty nice system. The metro mover is cool. Kind of reminds me of the Singapore LRT. And so yeah, there's like a lot of potential. Brightline is really nice. Let's just try to create some more connectivity and frequency and continue expanding, because Miami's a giant city. It doesn't actually have that much transit given the size of the city. Any idea why U.S. agencies are so anti-electrification? Freight companies are concerned, but there's a bunch of potential electrification. So, yeah, it's a good question. You know, I think it comes down to this. So I actually, and I get attacked for it frequently, I believe there is value, broadly speaking, if you design a transit system, right, or a railway system. There is sometimes value in avoiding fixed infrastructure if it gains you some flexibility, right? So people don't like it, but I'm often skeptical or critical of trolley buses, right? And I say the reason I don't necessarily always like them is because you kind of, you know, you limit yourself. Yes, there's bus backup trolleys and extended range trolleys and the like. Let's just imagine that isn't part of the conversation at the moment. Trolley buses mean that you have to put infrastructure where you want to run buses, and that sort of limits your flexibility. And if you have a big transit system, that's a lot of wires. Like, you think batteries are a lot of material for battery buses? That's actually a lot of, you know, minerals you have to mine to create all of the wire and substations, etc., for trolley bus wires. So there's a lot of material, etc., needed there, and there's a lot of complexity, right? And when you're bad at managing things, complexity is bad. And so having a fully integrated system where everything is electrified by wire is really good, but it makes you sort of more dependent on the infrastructure. And when you're bad at maintaining it, like in, say, America, then it starts to be a little less of a good thing. And I think what you've seen is that Probably agencies have gotten bitten a lot of times and they haven't adapted and became better at managing working with this fixed infrastructure. And for them, naturally, the logic is like, well, if we can't handle this fixed infrastructure, we should get rid of it and we should run diesel trains under the wire just in case something fails. Instead of making the wires more reliable, it's better for them to put diesel engines on every train. And I don't agree that that's a good approach. But as someone who cares about moving transit forward, and I hope for you folks too, you realize that you have to be pragmatic, and that even like when I say you have to be pragmatic, to an extent you have to be pragmatic, but you also have to see that when other people make decisions, they're doing it because they're trying to be pragmatic. And these agencies are incredibly pragmatic oftentimes, at least in their in their worldview of what is possible. And so I think that's the reason that they're opposed to it, because it leads to complexity which they can't handle, and they're trying to be pragmatic, and even if that's less efficient, if it gains them flexibility, they think it's worth it. So that's my thinking on that. Hopefully that was salient. What do you think of using hydro corridors in Toronto for busways, tram, or subway service? Great idea, especially the Finch Hydro Corridor. We should have just built the Finch LRT there, where there would be basically no grade crossings, and it could go way faster. Do you have any favorite Eastern European transit? Moscow, St. Petersburg, probably Moscow. Should SEPTA switch to RER-style trains? I'm not sure what you mean by that necessarily. Could you elaborate, perhaps? There's going to be no quick fixes to sync issues tonight, but good that Reece is aware. Yeah, if it's desynced, it seemed like it was synced up originally. Here's the situation, folks. I like streaming. I'm committed to doing it in the long term, but this cruddy Mac Mini I have, okay, it's fine for editing, but it's cruddy for streaming. It's not cutting it. So I'm getting a Windows computer with an NVIDIA graphics card that can stream way better. It might take a few weeks to get here. So the next 2 streams maybe is going to be a bit like this, a bit rough. You can listen, and things should get better over there. And over time, when I have more time to commit to learning how to do more stuff, I'd love to, for example, like pull up graphics and stuff while I'm streaming, and show folks that. But I'm just not. I'm not there yet, because streaming is. It's a bit of an experience, and it can be stressful, and making 7 videos in a week is a lot of work. I realized that I haven't just made 5 videos in the last 5 days. So I did a video every day this week from Monday, but I also released a video on Sunday and Saturday and Friday of last week. So there's been a lot of videos. So I'm just a little drained. San Diego is apparently proposing a $100 billion RER system with trains every 5 minutes. Good or too much rail? That is a pretty hard thing to judge. You know, 100 billion doesn't get you that much in America these days, sadly. So maybe that's like a 2-line RER system. Like, it's scary, but it seems like it's actually possible. If it's a good system, of course it would be great, but I would need more details to make a really good assessment, I think. A reasonable assessment. Do you think Via HFR will include a second Mount Royal tunnel from Gare Centrale to Park on the St. Jerome and Blue Line? No. That wouldn't be something that I think is feasible for, like, the cost would be huge. I think it would be a great thing in the long term, but I don't think that makes sense. And when you think about it, like, trains can run around the mountain. It doesn't matter that much, because I think a lot of trips are between Quebec City and Montreal, and a lot will be between Montreal and Toronto and Ottawa. I don't think there's actually that many people who are doing a direct trip from, say, Ottawa to Quebec City. There is probably a number, but I'm assuming it's not that large of a number. And so the connection sucks, but I think it's worth eating it versus paying a ton for a tunnel that we probably wouldn't design that well. Okay, we're getting buried again. I'm going to try to fly through Uh, Let me try to fly through. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're gonna go very fast now. This has been the craziest week for transit in 2 years. I pray for your sleep schedule. Stay healthy. Thank you so much. HFR is anything above 120 kilometers per hour. Hey, maybe. Hi, I'm watching this stream while riding a GO train. Don't use too much data. Your audio is not in sync anymore. Yeah. High speed should be any line with an average speed above 150 because average matters way more than top. See, everyone has a different opinion, and that should be okay. My hour-long bus comment was on about if walking along if it's valid. Of course, any line is valid. I think it's great. You don't notice the same stuff riding transit, so it's great if you're walking and you notice some stuff. If it's rural, you maybe are going to notice a little less, but it's still interesting. Why intercity coaches and intercity trains run on the same routes? More capacity, more flexibility. Perhaps the buses stop in places the trains don't. So those are the reasons I would say. Do you feel as though a North Shore SkyTrain should be as high a priority as SkyTrain to UBC? No. There is horrifying traffic to the North Shore, but there is massive demand to UBC, right? Transit demand. And so I think we need to capitalize on that first. Which US cities could need a metro system? I actually think very few US cities need a proper metro system. Seattle could use one. They threw out that opportunity, but US cities tend to be pretty sprawly, so I think RER style systems or Sydney train style systems could be a better option. Thoughts on the having dedicated lanes should not be an inherent goal for BRT. Definitely, if you can have buses going fast and they're not in dedicated lanes, why does it matter, right? Like, it's about service quality. Thoughts on the proposed dedicated bus lanes in Toronto, like on Dufferin and Ellesmere? Great, yeah, but like we can do this. It's crazy. It's not really. I don't consider that like a solution, basically, or a project, really. It's just obvious. Like, part of the road should be space for part of the road vehicles, which are buses. I saw a post earlier that's like, we shouldn't build subways. We should just put a bunch of dedicated bus lanes in. It's like, we can literally just do both of those things. We put lines on the street for cars. We will put lines on the street for buses, and we will just build subways. Like, there's no need to do one or the other. Bus lanes should just be a basic piece of infrastructure on streets that have buses. That have buses that actually require bus lanes. As someone else really importantly mentioned, if you don't have traffic, there's no need for bus lanes, right? And then everyone gets more space. The drivers aren't angry because, frankly, not making drivers angry is okay because it means that you have voters who are more willing to accept other things that they may not like, right? So that's my thinking on that. Should at-grade railroad crossings still exist in urban spaces? Only if they're infrequently used, I would say. But, grades separate where it makes sense. Thoughts on the proposed dedicated... Oh, okay, sorry, I need to scroll. Opinion on the e-highway trials in Sweden and Germany. Basically, trucks with overhead wires. It's great. Yeah, if you have a ton of trucks on a trunk route, charge them up, use the e-highway. I like it. I think HFR trains need to run through Montreal. I get that it's not useful for Quebec City, Toronto, but it's useful for Quebec City, Eastern Ontario. Yeah, definitely, but I don't think they have to because the biggest demand is going to be between Montreal and Quebec, right? So they definitely don't have to. They don't right now, right? So I don't think it's necessary. If a road or street doesn't suffer from congestion, widening it to add bus lanes is a bad thing. Absolutely. Hey, as someone who's lived in the southwest of England and took the HST, I'm of the opinion that HS1 is the only HSR in the UK, maybe the West Coast Main Line. I mean, I think that's just differing standards, right? In North America, we don't have any high-speed rail. I would certainly take the 125 over nothing, and I think that just goes to show that a lot of these things are relative and different people have different opinions, right? So I think that's very important to remember. Yeah, both the West Coast Main Line and East Coast Main Line could be 140 if only they paid for the signaling upgrade. Very sad that they don't. Does the TTC not like subways anymore? The Ontario line is like a SkyTrain style system and the two LRTs in the works. The TTC doesn't choose. If it did, it probably would build subways. The Ontario line is a subway. The SkyTrain is a subway for all intents and purposes, right? There's not really that big of a difference. And I think that that's the fundamental thing you have to realize is that what the train looks like is basically irrelevant, right? if the train is operating in a grade separated fashion, or even if it's in a 90% grade separated fashion, it's a metro, right? It doesn't really matter what the train is. If you have an LRV, then it has less doors. It's equivalent to a train that looks like a standard metro that's narrow and has less doors than average. I think looking at it purely from a sort of functional mathematical perspective is probably the best way to approach it. Best UK transit cities aside from London. There aren't many. I guess Newcastle would be? Manchester? That's not saying much. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad if they switched all the regionals to dual modes, since most go into Virginia. If they made the Keystone dual mode, then there's a problem. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's fine if trains are going to, but also if all of the trains are already going to Virginia, just electrify it, right? Like, I think that's like you can use dual modes, and I'm saying dual modes make sense, and not stringing up wires makes sense when you want the flexibility. You have an infrequent train, but you want to send it down a diesel only line. It may not make sense to electrify, just use a dual mode. If all the trains are already going there, then you should just electrify it. Would it make sense continuing the Quebec-Toronto high speed to Detroit and Chicago? Maybe in the long term, but it's not super high speed, so we'll have to see. Have you heard that the world's newest metro began operation on the 28th of June? It's in China and connects to Hangzhou's metro. I had not, but that's cool. A lot of the Chinese systems I don't get super excited for because they have so many, right? It becomes less interesting, and since they are highly standardized, it ends up not being the most exciting thing for me personally, especially since Google Maps doesn't work in China, and it makes it very hard to explore new lines, and so I just don't spend much time exploring China. And if Google Maps worked in China, then maybe I would talk more about transit in China because there would be more information. So that could be great, right? Electrification is always worth it if you have at least 6 trains per hour. I mean, yeah, if you have 6 trains per hour, that's pretty frequent. Would trolleybuses work in cities? Wouldn't trolleybuses work in cities like Seattle and San Francisco since they're dense and hilly? Yes, they are one of the places where they do make sense. That's why Calgary needs to move the Green Line north. Okay, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Someone is saying, I saw someone reply to Reece saying that they prefer diesel over batteries because of lithium extraction. Absolute madness. Yes, it is madness. It's sort of crazy sometimes how people become so, I don't know, opposed to a technology that will reduce harm, right? It's okay, I don't want to make any crazy comparisons, but you are reducing the amount of greenhouse gases being emitted into the atmosphere, which is kind of our number one problem at the moment. We have other problems with local pollution and tailings and etc. and mining, but those are not existential crises. Climate change is an existential crisis, right? So we need to fix that first. Also, like diesel buses are not good. They still use batteries. They use rare earth metals in catalytic converters and the like. And if you want to make them cleaner, you're going to have more rare earth metals. And if they're hybrids, they use even more batteries, right? So making a diesel bus good just makes it like a battery bus. So yeah, it's weird. If we want to reach net zero carbon, everything will need to be either electric, battery, or hydrogen. Well, all of those are technically electric. It's just about how you're getting the electricity. What if Chicago proper had the same safety, cleanliness, and decent schools as Toronto proper? How much more ridership would that generate? I don't think what the city is like matters. I think the transit quality matters. And the Chicago L doesn't have amazing service in many cases. It doesn't have great stations. It doesn't have great rolling stock. It's dated. It hasn't expanded. So I think that's probably a big part of what contributes to the poor ridership. I went to the next room and heard a big scream. Not sure what you're referring to there, Alfie. Does that mean Cities Skyline streams? Maybe in the future if people will be interested. If you are, maybe leave a comment on the video after I posted it. Please don't spam the chat. Hello all. Sorry if this was already mentioned, but the Calgary Green Line is ready for construction. Yeah, as mentioned in my earlier video. Reece wants to do Gareth Dennis style streams. Maybe. What year Mac Mini do you have? I have the M1 Mac Mini from fall. Oh, so many messages. I'm just thinking right now, because I have a lot of messages. I'm trying to think. Do I skip some? Probably not, though. I think I'll try to go through these, but I am gonna actually try to go fast now. Haven't projects like HFR been announced before then canned? Yes, but this is seeming like it's moved forward more. Have you ever been to Italy? The video about our network was amazing. Thank you so much. I have been to Italy. It was lovely, especially the I'm forgetting what it's called. The five villages. I'm terrible for forgetting, but the hikes, the villages. I took the train there. It was awesome. It was interesting. That was one of my first experiences with Trenitalia, and the train looked horrible on the outside. I was like, oh my goodness. But then when we got inside, it was shockingly nice. So that was an interesting experience. Very anecdotal, but yeah. What is your favorite RER train? The MI09, of course. The RER NG will probably surpass that, though. What do you think of the trend of LRTs being built in Southern Ontario? I think I've talked about this more than enough. Do you still think Texas Central will happen before California high-speed rail? Yeah, there's not really massive mountains to go through, so yes. I think they can build the whole thing before California can get tunneled through the mountains. Like, look at how long some of the tunnels in Europe are taking. Yes, they're giant base tunnels and such, but, you know, these type of huge mainline rail tunneling projects, not easy. I think, especially in California, people say earthquake zone, etc. It's hard. So it's not going to be fast. Of all the LRTs, what's the best implementation of LRT? So I think the context matters. Ion is great for small city. The crosstown is the best of these because it is the most grade separated, is what I'll say. Do you think Ottawa will need a REM-style system parallel to the current lines under construction within the next 20 years? Our population will be upwards of 1.8 million. I don't think it will need it parallel in the next 20 years, but maybe in like the next 40 to 50, yes. As far as I know, Alberta HSR was planned way earlier by the provincial government, but they found it not feasible. I'd like to know how they found high-speed rail not feasible. It seems like high-speed rail might be feasible. They've created in how many countries? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. What do you think of Kuala Lumpur's public transit system? Lots of expansion in recent years, and they built one of the world's longest metro lines, Line 9, at 51 kilometers. Ooh. See, I'm not familiar with the number nomenclature. I'm not sure if that's the line that uses Siemens Desiros, the Siemens Inspiro? Whatever it's called, the metro model. It looks cool. It's a good system, yeah. Lots of platform screen doors, I like it. What is the best way to serve all of Los Angeles without needing a car, buses, and regional rail? How should public transit agencies reconcile with permanent work from home from many, if not most companies, and resulting reduced revenue? I don't think permanent work from home is actually going to be a thing in many or most companies. Lots of companies are already trying to get employees to come back. Now, hybrid work model, that might be a thing for many companies, but I don't think it's going to be the majority. So I don't think that's a big issue. I think public transit agencies should invest in midday service frequency, and instead of, I made a video about this some time ago talking about how COVID could be good for transit. If this allows you to not focus on those 1% projects that are incredibly expensive for increasing capacity, you can invest in other places where your money goes a lot further. So I think that's valuable. Any transit announcements coming for Atlantic Canada? If I was your Minister of Transit, there would be. SkyTrain and elevated subway, indeed. Thoughts on the Greater Golden Horseshoe Transit Plan? I might make a video about this. I'm worried they might be overextending the Ontario line and duplicating GO service. Not really. The plan appears to be a circumferential, which would be really valuable because the GO lines are, radial, right? The East Coast Main Line is actually doing the signaling upgrade right now, but won't be running at 140 due to timetabling constraints because it's already near full. Thoughts on using the Scarborough RT for right-of-way for bus service? Yeah, let's do that. Or use it to expand the GO right-of-way. Do you consider the Ottawa O train a subway or metro? Yes. To be quite honest, for me, this stream is largely a radio show with a 3D avatar of Reece in the background. Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Not every regional train goes to Virginia. Some trains only run on the Northeast Corridor. Okay, well, who knows? IMO. Upgrading line speed doesn't matter as much as making the slow bits quicker. Stuff like improving station throats, straightening curves, and adding station bypasses. Something I talked about. I say this a lot, but I do like to refer to old videos because I touch on a lot of topics. I've made a lot of videos now, so yeah, definitely. I definitely agree, and I talked about it. I think like what Amtrak should be doing, something like that video. Since I've been in this stream for like almost an hour, I should say, if you're not already, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Link for the next stream is in the description, so go set a reminder. And I have a new channel, so you should go check that out if you haven't already. Because, yeah, I'm making casual videos over there where I don't have to spend hours editing. Just for fun, but as kind of in between videos, and I can talk about stuff not related to transit. It would be great to hear a more detailed take from you on battery trams. Trackless trams and battery trackless trams, like the CRC one. I've heard you joke about it being silly before, but why? Well, if it's just a bus... Like, so if it's trackless, then it is really just a bus, right? A guided bus, which is something that already existed. And if it needs a driver, then I don't really see the purpose of the sort of, trackless element, like it's, being guided or whatever. I don't see the benefit of that. For battery trams, if you're investing in the infrastructure of rails embedded into your streets, which is, hypothetically more complex than rails just on, ballast, then I think you can invest in third rail or wire, and so that's sort of the reason. Also, should they convert the Trillium line to full automation and electrification? Yes, but not in that order. I'd agree nearly every metro station in China is based on a cookie cutter template of island platforms, platform screen doors, and 2 escalators and a full concourse up top. Yeah, full concourse definitely not needed. Was referring to developing in response to transit demand as you recommend for U.S. cities. Calgary's Center Street corridor is intensity run. Ooh. Wow, I'm just catching up to where I was a while back. Okay. After your DC video, I looked at more cross-city suburb light rail systems, Toronto, DC, Copenhagen, Helsinki, etc. I think it's becoming a trend. Yeah, maybe. The best transit is no transit. Everything walking distance from home. I don't know about that. I don't think that's actually very practical. Connection of HSR and airports like in Frankfurt. Opinion. Maybe I should do a video on that. It's actually a very interesting topic. Let me make a note of that. I'm pretty sure I planned on doing a video on this exact topic before, but I just ended up maybe not making a video, so let's just go HSR airports. Okay, let me close that. Oh, I should probably say connection. HSR airport connections, because otherwise I'm gonna think it's complete. Does HSR compete with flights or something? Austin is more sprawling than San Diego, and it has more potential with light rail because it has more downtown employment. Well, then I think you could do regional rail. I don't know why light rail is necessarily the choice, or light metro. Yes, everyone is telling me what the location in Italy is called. Do you think Texas Central will happen before Brightline West from LA to Vegas? Well, Brightline West from LA to Vegas is a long way off, so yes. The construction won't be fast, but the train will be. I rode the L a couple months ago. The trains were horribly loud, but I will say the elevated stations with wooden platforms were very cool. Very cool, but wooden platforms. I rolled the... Okay, someone is sending a repeat message here. The DLR is a fantastic light rail system. Not a light rail system. Uh, Also, do you think Montreal could complement its REM system by electrifying parts of its EXO lines and running those trains in similar fashion? They're never going to run as a similar fashion to the REM lines because they're not running metro trains. But there's lots of potential, definitely. What do you study in university? I'm not in university, but I have a degree in computer science, which I got in June. Last June, not this June. I've had it for a year. DLR best. I see. Alberta's government don't want HSR to be feasible. Well, it seems like it's moving forward. DLR is the best, but it's much more accurate to call it light metro. I agree. In your opinion, is the London Overground a metro, regional rail, or commuter rail, regional rail? Frequency is too low to be a metro, and the trains are too large and not metro style. But it's not commuter rail because I don't really think that's a thing in most competently run places. Do you think trams and light rail can replace subways and metros in big cities? Definitely not. I discussed in many videos. Any predictions or opinions you're willing to admit you were wrong about? Oh, that's a great question. Well, I guess the most recent one was I assumed that the battery hybrid trains that Amtrak was doing would have distributed batteries. When they're not, they're going to have that single battery car, which I think is very silly. But that is the thing that I predicted, and I was incorrect. Do you think station spacings in Montreal Metro are too small? No, I think they are perfect. But then again, station spacing, like everything, is dependent on the location. So the Orange Line extension has wider station spacings. So I shouldn't have said that. Context matters, but then I guess in the context, Montreal station spacings are good. So, nice. Okay. What do you think of French tram systems? Do you think American cities should take inspiration from them or not? No, because they generally don't have the built form of French cities. In Kuala Lumpur, Line 9 is the green line with the Siemens and Spiral, fully driverless. Yeah, it is lovely. I didn't realize it was 52 kilometers long. Thoughts on light rail, such as the DC Purple Line being used as circumferential lines? Why not just build a light metro? If you're going to be doing a lot of grade separation, it's going to cost the same amount anyways, but the trains are better. So yeah. What's your overall opinion on GRT, and how would you improve it as a region is expected to reach over 700,000 people in population by 2030? GRT is doing really well. Continue expanding ION. Convert to Presto, because they should have done that in the first place. Presto being bad and all. And just keep on keeping on. Could you do a demystified video on East-West Rail or Northern Powerhouse Rail? Your videos on Crossrail and HS2 are great. Thank you so much. As well as the HSR in the UK one. Maybe, but these projects are not nearly as far along. So I usually do demystified on projects that are sort of under construction, and they don't seem to be that popular anymore. So that's why I haven't made as many. Trackless trams are really complicated to build because the wheels are always in the same place, which puts heavy loads on the right-of-way. Easier to have that load borne by steel on steel. Very good point. If you ever look at a street where there's a lot of buses, you'll see grooves being worn into the street. You should just build a train if that's the case. What is the cost of building a new train station in downtown Houston, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia? $276 million, 586,000... Wait, what did I say? $261,586,420. Something like that. Okay. Waterloo has so many big transit projects. ION Stage 1, 2, getting 2 new train stations, getting electric Arctic buses, DMU to Cambridge, a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is not necessarily confirmed to be happening. These are a lot of sort of fantasy plans. If we see more stuff happen, I'll make a video. But yes, the new station for Waterloo is really nice. I think I've made a video about it in the past. Is there urban rail transit in Quebec City? Not yet. Best transit is no transit. Okay. What's your opinion of Jason Kenney? I don't think I'm going to talk about that. Hey Chopper, you'll know why I'm asking this. Assuming the HFR project ends up costing $10 billion, is that what you would have done with that constrained amount? Definitely not. I would have put proper high-speed rail or faster rail between between Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. They're the most important cities on the route. It's mainly Montreal and Toronto that are important, but Ottawa is conveniently in the middle of those two cities. It doesn't need to be 320 kilometers per hour. Just go as fast as you can go with the budget you're given, right? I think that's more valuable. Because, yeah, when you do HFR east to Quebec City, then you probably should build the tunnel if you want to do it, like, properly, right? So, to a world-class level. Do you think the Boring Company will ever be profitable? Sure, the loop is dumb, but they also want to build shared utility tunnels and empty tunnels for their customers to put things in. Like, I'm not in the business of making meme videos about Elon Musk and his companies, but, like, I've said this before, if the Boring Company can make tunneling cheaper, which Elon Musk has run a lot of successful businesses, if they can do it, then that's great. And, like, for utility tunnels, etc., it is actually very valuable. So, I do not own a helicopter. Don't worry about that. DLR is not light rail. It's literally in the name. Unfortunately, there's some crazy names out there. Do you feel the Chuo Shinkansen should be extended to Osaka or stop in Nagoya? Well, the plan is to extend to Osaka, and I think everyone knows that's reasonable. Connect the two largest cities, right? Do you see Via Rail as finally having a resurgence not only in Ontario and Quebec, but across Canada? Would you like to see more lines operated by Via in Western Canada or by more local operators? Well, there isn't really a local operator. I would love to see Via expand, like with bus service perhaps in the West and with high-speed rail in Alberta. Shouldn't have let a private company announce something before Via did. But yeah, Via was already starting to gain ridership before the pandemic, and I'm sure it will recover and things should be good. It will be interesting to see how Rome, BAMP's transit agency's Proterra buses work. It's good to see and appropriate for the low densities. I agree. And especially in a beautiful natural environment, having zero emissions buses is nice. Hey, have you seen much on the Turkish HSR network? Seems like they've been doing a lot of development recently. I've followed it a little. I believe they're using Siemens Velaros, which I talked about in my German high-speed rail video. At what population size should cities invest in light rail and BRT instead of relying on buses and streetcars? Well, I don't think you should ever build light rail, basically. I think you can generally just do buses, and I think you're fine. I think light rail is sort of the rich man's transit solution, because it means you've maxed out what you can build with buses, and what you can do with buses, which very few cities have done. And I think that, like, basically the biggest benefit of light rail is just premium features over buses. You're not necessarily actually adding all that much capacity, so you're making the ride more comfortable. You're making it truly zero emissions, at least much more zero emissions than buses, because there's no tire wear, etc. But like, you can do the same stuff with buses for way less capital costs. So it's the rich man's transit solution. The speed of a metro is better, right? Do you think it was a mistake for Vancouver to rip out the tracks in the Arbutus corridor? I mean, they're going to have to be replaced anyways, so no. How do you think Ottawa Via Station could be improved? High platforms everywhere, please. Have you heard... Oh, and also a connection to the south. I should have said that for sure. Have you heard of Norway's new Airport Express trains? I haven't seen them, but the CAF Oaris, I mentioned those trains in my Spanish high-speed rail video. Very cool to hear that Norway is getting them. I think I may have heard about that. I'll be excited to see them. Any idea when the US-Canada border will open? No idea. Should Canada have a national public transit smart card? I would love that. What do you think of the Texas Central Railway? They recently won a legal suit trying to stop the line from being built. Cool. Sorry, I mean, like, they are cool, and I'm happy, and I hope to see them succeed, but we'll have to see. What would you do to Via Rail service west of Union Station to help make it more viable for people to use? More service, more service, and more frequency being the same thing. Slightly higher speeds, enhance the stations. They're kind of bad in some places. I think those are things to focus on. What is better, Via or Amtrak? They're not really comparable. The US is 10 times bigger than Canada. New York City buses versus TTC buses. The TTC buses are far better than the New York buses. The TTC has the best bus system in North America. Do you think the Chuo Shinkansen, or, well, I would argue it's actually better than Mexico City's. Mexico City has Metrobus, great BRT system, but, the rising tide of the TTC bus service lifts all boats, so to speak. Do you think the Churo Shinkansen should be extended under the Pacific to Vancouver? I'm not even going to answer that. Do you think VIA HFR trains go through run to Kitchener? Go is electrifying to Kitchener and adding two-way service. I don't actually know that they are electrifying to Kitchener. I think it's kind of up in the air. I guess if they're using battery trains, that could be an option. And since battery trains are suddenly a thing, then yeah, why not? Makes sense. What's your thoughts on Alstom's APS system for trams? Great if you don't have snow. What city that lacks a metro do you think should have one? Manchester, maybe? Do you think Brampton needs better transportation than buses? It's getting light rail. Does it need better transportation than that? Well, it would be useful. I think it should have got light metro. Elon hasn't made tunneling cheaper. He uses smaller tunnels, which are cheaper to construct, that are dug with an off-the-shelf TBM. Well, actually, no, not necessarily the case. I'm not saying I never suggested that Elon had made like train tunneling cheaper. There are actually various sizes of TBMs. The Boring Company still uses TBMs. They're just small TBMs, and those exist for the purposes mentioned, making utility tunnels and things like that. And they actually do, I believe, they have actually reduced the cost of tunneling because I believe they're using like old TBMs and that sort of thing. And so, no, there is potential there, and they have the potential to legitimately innovate. And so I'm excited to see what happens. But not for the silly cars and tunnels thing. How much more costly has BART construction been because of seismic faults, mountains, and the Bay Area? Not even Vancouver has many geographic barriers. Vancouver has, let's think, the Burrard Inlet, rivers, giant hills and mountains. It sounds like a lot of geographic barriers to me. Think of places like Japan, places like Italy and Spain. There's a lot of places with a lot of difficult geography that still manage to do construction a lot cheaper. Wouldn't the cost savings of an electric vehicle locomotive over a dual mode greatly outweigh electrifying the remaining 10%? It shouldn't in the long run, no. Is there a reason other than cost that so many American train systems use low-floor platforms? I never see them in the UK. Freight rail, because you can have potential interference with freight trains hitting platforms. What's your take on the opinion that high-speed rail won't bring more development to mid-level cities, but only make the central city even more dominant? I think that's a hard thing to answer. I think if you know the answer to that, you know the answer to a lot of really complicated problems. Having standard open payment APIs would be better than a standard smart card. Yeah, perhaps. Interoperability like Japan. What is better, elevated or underground metros? It just, again, depends on the context. Thoughts on electric locomotives being used for Go Express services and EMUs being reserved for the milk runs? I think that makes sense. Manchester's Metrolink is actually pretty good. I used it recently in the UK. Leeds is definitely the place that needs a metro the most. It's okay. Yeah. Reading could use a Reading. Sorry, I said Reading. Reading could use a light metro. I haven't been to Reading, so I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's not big enough to justify, at least not a traditional light metro. What do you think of Flair Airlines announcing that they will start flying to Orlando and Fort Lauderdale from Kitchener-Waterloo? Very cool that Kitchener-Waterloo's airport is becoming significant enough. Alfie, I think, has hit the nail on the head. A VAL type thing. Some sort of small light metro, maybe. Ooh, Pat R. Studio Productions. Thank you for the super chat. It is much appreciated. And thanks for saying hello. How viable do you think it would be for the USA to get car dependency down, and on what time frame? I think that at the moment the most urgent thing is actually electrifying vehicles, because getting car dependency down is going to be probably a multi-decade thing. It just takes a long time to rebuild infrastructure and build transit and the like. Of course, we can do interventions beforehand. We can run more buses. We can run better transit service. We can start building transit lines. We can make cycling and walking more practical. But that stuff is just going to take a lot of time, right? It's a big country. Lots of infrastructure already exists. Do you see a possibility for electrifying freight rail corridors in North America? Seems to work in Russia, India, and China pretty well. What's different about North America? Well, the private operators own the rails and they operate as businesses, and for them, they're very protective of their business assets, right? So, of course, it's possible, but the way we have things set up with the freight rail companies having a lot of power and the government not being able to or willing to stand up to them means that I don't think it's likely. Isn't Alon Levy's criticism of the Boring Company that they're not building the expensive stuff of a metro train system? I'm not sure what Alon Levy's criticism of the Boring Company is, but I've already said I don't think that their transportation solutions make sense. I'm really only interested in sort of their ability to make tunneling cheaper. Thoughts on VAL and other forms of proprietary metro? Worse than non-proprietary metro for sure. Thoughts on trolley extension versus people mover from downtown San Diego to the airport? I think like a people mover, honestly. It's not that far, and people movers are basically light metros, so better than the LRT. Be honest, you really understand Transmilenio to a degree. Proprietary metro is good if it can tick boxes normal systems can't. I guess maybe. Sorry, my throat is really sore. I'll take another sip. I think that VIA is not considering enough that London, Kitchener, and Toronto's airports are all on the North Main Line. You could have a Euro-style multi-airport transfer. I like your thinking, but at the same time, why would you fly to like London to take a train to Toronto? Because virtually anyone, or Kitchener for that matter, anyone who's flying to Kitchener will probably have the choice of flying to Toronto, and I do not think the cost and inconvenience, potential savings of going to what's it called of doing a train transfer makes sense in that case. Like, they're tiny airports. If you had two major airport hubs where you're starting to like link things up and the like, then maybe it makes sense because okay, now we're trying to do travel hacking, and this airport has this airline, and I can get a good connection, and this it's less expensive and whatever. But otherwise, I don't think so. Why the California high-speed train can be achieved between San Francisco and San Jose? I'm not sure what your question is here. Marley C says, thanks for the UK HSR video, by the way, it was really good. Thank you so much for the super chat, and thank you for the kind words. 2 super chats in one stream. This is pretty good. Reece coughing is not the secret signal for the commenter to be banned, Alfie. But I like that you're trying to read between the lines here. Do you think after Ion Stage 2 is built, should the region try to work on better bus frequencies or make a west-east LRT line? They should do both, but they can start making bus frequencies better today. What do you think of Crossrail 2 being put on hold indefinitely, especially when it can relieve the Victoria and Northern lines, especially with HS2 at Euston? I didn't know it was put on hold indefinitely, but it feels like sort of one of those projects that's a little out there. You know, it's not going to be built too soon, so it doesn't feel like it's really being delayed as much as it's just not being built right now. Crossrail 1 hasn't even opened yet, so let's let that happen, and then we can start talking about Crossrail 2. But I do think it's important for relieving some very congested tube lines. Do you think Montreal to Toronto Hyperloop would benefit the economy? So no, because a Hyperloop is not a real technology. So definitely not. No. Bad. Hyperloop is not good. We should not waste time really researching it, I don't even think. Well, I guess if private companies want to burn investors' money researching it, they can, but high-speed rail and even high-speed freight are existing things that we have. We should build those. I don't think the R&D cost of a Hyperloop is worth it for us right now. When we can barely build railways for affordable prices, how do you expect us to build giant multi-100-kilometer long vacuum tubes with electromagnets for an affordable price? If you see what I'm going for there. Any cities in Canada where regional rail could be feasible outside of Toronto? Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, all of them could have regional rail. I'd love to see some videos on zoning and housing policy of cities, density support transit, Vancouver is around 80% zoned for single-family homes. Toronto more like 60%. LA 70%, etc. Perhaps, but I think what you've seen in Vancouver is there is a super strong concentration of that density around transit, and that is really helpful. So yeah. Toronto has a lot of high rises that are sort of just in the middle of nowhere, near no subway or rail lines, just on bus lines, which is great. It drives a lot of bus ridership, but yeah, I don't talk about housing policy because I'm not as interested in things like zoning, etc. But I will work my way over there. Have you heard of the old Piccadilly Victoria tunnel plan in Manchester? No. Do you think the SkyTrain Canada line should use 3 full-length cars by having parts of the train not served by the platform so that it would take longer before it reaches full capacity? Yeah, that makes sense. There could be more seats in the last car where one of the set of doors don't open. Yep, it's definitely possible. I'd love to see the urbanity do stuff like that. I agree. Do you think North America will ever adopt platform screen doors like those found in Asia and European metros? Yeah, we are. HART in Hawaii is going to, and the Ontario line in Toronto is supposed to, and the REM in Montreal, which is already under construction, is going to. Thoughts on the missing middle? I think it's a little overhyped. Do you have the latest news on when the Hanoi Metro is going to open? I do not, unfortunately. Should BART build a subway from downtown to Richmond or Sunset? Perhaps, but I don't think it should be the highest priority. Transbay Tube number 2 is probably more important. Aren't all metros in some way bespoke, so what's the criticism of proprietary metros? Yes, but they're bespoke in ways that are easily adaptable. So maybe the wheels are slightly farther apart, or the loading gauge is different. They don't use different types of wheels and electrification systems and signaling systems. What is something transit related that Canada does better than the rest of the world? Well, I think Toronto has some of the best bus service in the entire world, and I think that is something we do immensely well. What do you think about the Northern Line extension in London? Good addition, or just benefiting the people who can afford to live in the new luxury housing there? That's a great question. I'm not sure, but I do think the development at Battersea Power Station looks really cool, if really fancy. It is definitely like old-timey, historic people heaven if you're rich. Should San Jose remove its light rail tracks for something better? Well, anything would probably be better, but no, they shouldn't remove more of their light rail tracks. What's going to be the next transit announcement in Canada? Maybe it will be something in London, as someone mentioned. Hyperloop does nothing a high-speed train can't do. If it could go to 600 kilometers per hour, then maybe, but again, Japan is building the Churo Shinkansen, and it actually is a working technology, right? They're already building it. Throw that guy in a vacuum, and you're off to the races. It's way better than a Hyperloop. Building a metro with a special gauge is a great way to make your rolling stock costs skyrocket for no reason. Looking at you, Toronto. Also, what do you think about Hyperloop in West Virginia? Same thing about Hyperloop anywhere else. Thanks for complimenting my shirt. When you're going to do a video about high-speed rail in the Netherlands, you should probably combine it with high-speed rail in Belgium and call it high-speed rail in Benelux, i.e. Luxembourg as well. Unique track gauge is a red herring. Only about 50% of the world's railways are standard gauge. Yeah, track gauge matters less than people think, but it is just something that, like, you don't need to make it non-standard. Calling unique track gauge a red herring is itself a red herring. Okay. I think it's a fun thing to debate. Do you think there will ever be a high-speed rail line between Vancouver and Montreal? Unlikely. La Ping Vino has sent a super chat. Thank you so much. This is now a world record for super chats on an RM Transit live stream, and the message is an insightful sunglasses. So you get me to go like this for a couple more seconds. What do you think of the Oban in Adelaide? It is a weird thing. I'm not sure it's necessary, but it is cool. Would love a New York Metro North video. I think it's severely undercovered, but as a daily rider, I am really biased. No, I agree. I will cover it, and I would love to travel to New York and ride it. I haven't taken it a bunch, but it would be fun, I think. So yeah, I'd love to make some videos about it. There's lots of things I want to make videos about still. Because I'm going to make videos for years. So there's all of these things will be covered. It's just going to be a matter of time. You talked about light rail. What do you think of Seattle? It seems to be a good compromise. It's mostly grade separated. Yeah, but like... And it is having a big expansion. I've made videos about it. The truth is that the fact that more of it is grade separated just means that the justification for not fully grade separating it is even worse. No one should build a new system with non-standard gauge, but expansions to existing non-standard gauge systems are no big deal. I agree 100%. Gauge isn't that big of a deal, but like, yes, let's build it. Let's build everything as standard as possible if we're building new stuff to reduce rolling stock, etc. Rolling stock costs, etc. A little tired. What do you think of the greater... Okay, yes, I'm going to make a video about this. Someone already asked about this. Well, sure, once you've made your bed, you should be pretty committed to lying in it. I agree. But Spain choosing to make their high-speed network standard, but Spain doing high-speed as standard despite being a 1668mm country. What do you think about maglev? Too expensive to become mainstream? Well, seems more realistic than Hyperloop, but it's just not on the hype train, so to speak. Is Silicon Valley employment too dispersed across sprawling office parks for light rail to ever work? Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think I've mentioned before in previous streams when talking about VTA light rail. Do you think it would be a good idea to extend TTC Line 1 to Wonderland? As much as train to amusement park enthusiasts would like it to be, I do not think so. As well as Boston enthusiasts. Spain has chosen to do standard gauge on high-speed rail for Europe-wide compatibility. If Spain was an island, it would have been a terrible idea to build their high-speed rail network with standard gauge. I think that's actually a very good point. Yeah, having that connectivity with the rest of Europe is definitely valuable. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the new Battersea Tube Station is technically named Battersea Power Station. Actually, I think that might be the case, which is hilarious. Do you still live in Toronto? Indeed, I do. That's how I was walking in Toronto last night. See my Twitter for more. If you're not already, go follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Link to the next stream where you can set yourself a reminder is in the description below. And I made a new YouTube channel, so go check that out as well. Anyways, back to the chat, because there are still messages coming in. Thoughts on Cambridgeshire's busway? Should it have been reopened as a heavy rail line, as it used to be a rail alignment? A rail alignment. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. I know of the busway, but I don't have enough knowledge to say definitively. Oh, La Ping Vino was saying that the thing he sent was called a super sticker, but it wasn't very useful because he could not actually say anything with it. Could you talk about how Australia, a similarly natural resource-dependent country with lots of regional rail, has such good regional rail? History, right? They built the railways, the urban railways, earlier and electrified them earlier, and they just kept them, which we didn't always necessarily. Talk less about track gauge, talk more about loading gauge. Great point. And then Alfie says the UK is in shambles. Australia has good commuter rail and pretty terrible regional rail. The meanings are confused. So in Canada, regional rail is what Australians call commuter rail, and what Australians call regional rail is like intercity rail but short distance in North America. Australia has... Okay, sorry, I already read that. Didn't Japan choose to build the Shinkansen in standard gauge as building with the thinner Cape gauge isn't viable for high speed? Correct. Imagine if the UK started designing infrastructure to use double-decker trains decades ago. It's a good question. Which city do you prefer to live in? Vancouver, Toronto, and why? Vancouver is a beautiful city, and it's really nice, but it has some fundamental flaws that make Toronto better for me. When will the Victorians learn? Sergey says, thanks. What's the best way to get hardline environmentalists on board with building new train lines? Like the people who are opposed to high-speed 2 or East-West Rail in the UK. Tell them that you want to do a diesel train line instead. Or a coal train line. That's even better. A steam-powered coal train line. and you want to start converting all the trains to steam trains again, because we should regress to the past. Why can't old North American cities have more commuter or metro hybrids like Japan? They have the best density, walkability, etc. in North America. Should be doable. REM is a good step. I agree with all of this. Why can't they? I think hopefully REM will inspire them to do so. Have you ever been to the Netherlands or Portugal, where I live now? I have been to both. I spent a decent amount of time in the Netherlands. As it turns out, I've been to Amsterdam a number of times, as well as Rotterdam, and I have family who fought in World War II, liberating the Netherlands. So they're in like Canadian war cemeteries there, and so it's been a country I've spent a decent amount of time in and thinking about. So it's an important country to me. And I have also been to Portugal, yes. Hi, greetings from Chile. Waiting for what you will say about the Santiago Metro. I will make a video about the Santiago Metro. It is a great system. Theo on the Discord server is an expert of it, so if you ever want to talk about Santiago Metro, he will tell you literally everything about the system. What's one pro and one con about the Ontario line in your opinion? One pro is it's a modern automated system. One con is that I am just thinking because I want to come up with a good con. A good con is the lack of a station at Cherry Street. That's my opinion. Does extending peak hour frequencies to become all-day frequencies really increase ridership that much? Definitely, because if you can't ride the train during the middle of the day, you won't ride the train. Funny insights. Kings Dominion and Busch Gardens in Virginia are both within 2 miles of Amtrak lines. I didn't know that. Do you know how Prague Metro manages to transport so many people with so few lines and lengths? I'd have to look into it more. Stop HS2 protesters flying in from Spain is a very interesting turn of events. What are the fatal flaws of Vancouver that make it worse than Toronto? I'll have to leave that for a later video. Talking about loading gauges. So Alstom's having difficulties with the Bombardier acquisition. Do you expect them to sell Bombardier's designs to another company? Some people suggested Hitachi. We'll see what happens, I guess. By the way, Perth in Australia is a very interesting case of building commuter rail from the ground up, unlike the East Coast cities with legacy systems. Yes, it is very interesting, especially the trains going down highway medians and making really sharp curves. Thoughts on the EXO CEO saying he was in talks with VIA to build a new link for the Mash-Couche line into Montreal? I didn't know about this. Well, that's very interesting. What do you think of flirt trains? I used them a lot when I lived a 6-minute walk from a station where they stopped. I love flirts. I love Statler trains in general. I think Statler's a really good company. What's your opinion on Jakarta's BRT? I don't actually know that much about it, but I will make a video, something like the Transmilenio video about it in the future. Prague, length is good only if it's useful. This is a perfect example of a system with short lines that works well. Great point, and the Paris Metro is another example of a system with short lines that works really well, right? So you don't need a lot of length to be an effective system, right? Look at the Vancouver SkyTrain; it's longer than Toronto's subway, and yet it gets far less ridership. I love the SkyTrain, of course, but I'm just putting it out there. And I have made it to the bottom of the chat. Oh my goodness, that is a miracle. I'm gonna take a drink. Well, I think if there are no more questions, comments, or the like, I guess this will wrap up today's stream. Thanks everyone for joining in. I'll stay on for a few more minutes unless there's any final questions, since it's been like an hour and a half of streaming and I am a little tired. I should sleep at some point. I appreciate everyone coming here. If you haven't already, please go follow me on Twitter and Instagram and set a reminder for the next stream, and join the Discord server and subscribe to the second channel. Yes, the 30-minute treatise on Vancouver being bad is something I will talk about in the future. Thoughts on the Auckland LRT? Let's do light metro, guys. Come on. I like the NZ infra plan, and that's not just because I'm Canadian. He skipped my question about what would be the best for connecting worldwide gaps. Honestly, I think I just missed it. There were a lot of messages in the chat. If you want to resend it, I'd be happy to answer it. Congrats on making it to the bottom. We love the vids and the work you put to us. I try to work hard to produce lots of videos and quality videos because transit is important to me, and the mainstream media does not really cover it very much. Quickly, what's your opinion on the 200,000-ish population city that does transit the best? That's a difficult question. Maybe like Kingston, Ontario? There's probably one in like Europe or Asia that destroys it, so I'm not sure. In the 1970s and 80s, New York City subway ridership dropped even faster than New York City population as subway felonies skyrocketed. In other cities, most riders have cars. How much does crime affect ridership? Well, I think if you have really bad crime, it's going to affect ridership, so you should avoid having really bad crime on your trains. Yeah, not going to help. What's the craziest reply you've gotten in the past week, YouTube or Twitter? Well, I saw someone saying, and this isn't a reply, but it was just something that someone said. Essentially, what they said was that more stations on a transit line is always better because it means more riders and more accessibility. So basically, someone was arguing with them that hey, there's a drawback. If you have more stations, it takes longer for people upstream to ride down the line because the bus is stopping every block. And the person said, no, more stations is always better. That was the craziest thing I think I've ever seen. I then retorted with, I guess Chicago got it right with its continuous station that is literally just a single platform that just goes on forever. I guess with this logic, we should just have the entire train line is a single platform. The train drives an entire train length down the platform and stops again and just continually does that, and it takes 8 hours to cross a single subway line. So yeah, that was it. Drew Melvin says, do you see my great video comments? Yes, Drew, thank you so much. Should rural car parks at stations have paid parking or not? Yes, because land is not free. What stations should have? I'm from Belgium. It's a discussion that comes up a lot. Of course, it should be free. It should cost money, but we should have transit alternatives. Lausanne for 200,000 cities. Yes. Imagine we have a worldwide trade network. What would be your best guess for what tech will fill in the gaps with what we have now? I'd say 200 kilometer per hour electrified rail. Thoughts on a fourth rim branch to Laval? Would it be too overcrowded? Maybe we need to build a second trunk if we're doing that. Thank you for this stream. It's great to ask questions and just have a casual conversation about transit. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it so much. And I'm at the bottom of the chat again. So I think I'm going to end the stream off. Thank you everyone so much for coming and sitting with me for an hour and a half to talk about transit. It's been a great week. Tons of videos, tons of projects. If you haven't seen the videos from this week, go take a look. I think they're really good videos, especially the UK high-speed rail video. I worked really hard on that with Gareth Dennis and David Frankel. As usual, follow me on social media, and I'll see you folks in 2 weeks for another stream. Thoughts on express services on metros? London doesn't really have any, and maybe it would be good if they exist.